I stopped my husband from committing suicide and he thinks I never knew his plans. My husband and I are 28, we have 3 kids, he's the only boyfriend I've ever had, he's been with me since high school, he's always had low self-esteem, I do too, but not like he does. One day, we got new phones, maybe 7 years ago, I found out I can read his texts, he can see mine too, but he didn't know about it. This happened for like another 2 years. For his birthday and Christmas I'd snoop around his texts and see if there's something he was talking about that he wanted. One day, around November I was being nosy to see what I can get him for Christmas. I was pregnant with our second child at the time. I saw he was texting someone something suspicious, saying where can we meet, and I thought this was with another girl. I read them more and I found out he was buying drugs. My husband and I don't even drink, so I freaked out. I wondered about how long this was going in for, if I even knew my own husband anymore. Turns out he was buying something that doesn't get you high, but kills you. I looked around everywhere, I tore our room apart and didn't find anything. I went through the search history and all his emails on his phone when he was asleep that night, and found he was making arrangements for a specific date 3 months after I was due. He was looking at life insurance, which we have had since I'm a stay-at-home mom. He was even looking up how much tea costs to be cremated. Once he got home, the first thing I did was sneak his phone and text that guy and say, I'm no longer interested. If someone else tells you otherwise it means someone else has my phone, and deleted that guy's number. I didn't want him to know I was snooping, but the thought of my husband not being around tore me. I remember being sick to my stomach and bawling in our room just thinking of the idea of not having him around. I love him more than life in itself. I would die for him and not even have to think about it. My husband is my entire world. That day on I made sure he knew that, even if it meant embarrassing myself. I started bringing him flowers at work almost every day. When he would come through the door I would screech with excitement and give him a hug and a smooch and tell him I missed him so much and I couldn't stop thinking about him all day. When I was out with him how beautiful and handsome he is. When he was around my friends I'd say, look at my husband, he's so beautiful. I'd call him at work and ask how much longer until he's home. I got him to start going to therapy too. One night I woke him up because I was freaking out and couldn't sleep. I told him I had a nightmare. I said I had a dream he passed away. He said, why is that a bad thing? And I told him how he's my entire world, and other than our son, and our other on the way, he's all I live for. He said, but things would be better if I was out of your hair. And I said, no they wouldn't. If you left me it would literally ruin my life. He said, not if you're financially well off, you'll be much better off. And I said, I could have all the money in the world, it would mean nothing if I didn't have you. I'd much rather be homeless but still have you as my husband than be filthy rich and you be gone. And he said, are you serious? And I said, 100%, I'd sleep under a bridge if it meant I still got to sleep next to you. He said, I didn't know you felt that way, and I said, I really do. I asked if I could go with him to therapy. He said yes. I told his therapist I think he has depression, and he admitted he might. He got a prescription, and it seemed to help him a whole lot. Even though it's been 5 years I still do all those nice things for him, like call him handsome and bring him flowers. I don't ever want him to second guess for a second that he's my sunshine. Comments, yes, this is so true, and OP is absolutely wonderful. What an intelligent, intuitive, loving person who has never given up. I wish I could say the same for my husband. We're currently separated. This is one of the many reasons. I have a rare chronic illness. It causes pain, severe weight loss, nausea, etc. It's brutal physically, but that led to the mental pain and anguish. Thankfully a doctor recognized how long I had been battling it without mental health resources and referred me to a wonderful psychologist. Unfortunately, it wasn't enough, because at home I was mostly bedridden from being under 90 pounds, in pain and unable to mentally cope with how my husband was just leaving our house in shambles, as if he'd never cooked and cleaned before we met. I started withdrawing from everyone, not taking visitors, calls or texts. My husband just ignored me sometimes, not even asking if I was okay in the evening or if I needed food. Finally, my best friend since kindergarten kept calling and calling until I finally picked up and had a mental breakdown, telling her everything, including my suicidal ideation. I had a whole plan and everything. She took action immediately, called my husband and my mom. My husband did nothing except pretend to be concerned and tell me lies that he had been worried, and called my friend to try to get through to me. Total BS. My friend followed up and visited. She made sure I was seeing a psychiatrist who listened and cared. She checked up on me, same with my mom, she was up at my house in a flash and stayed 2 weeks, no judgment, just love. But those never went away, not all the way, and my husband never admitted that his part was neglectful and uncaring. On top of it all, he physically hurt me later, so when I started feeling better, I ran, literally. It's been tough because he still won't admit to what he did, and that's even more hurtful. Second story. So recently on a night out with some new friends I've made, one of the girls I've got particularly close to was telling me about a guy that's kind of a stalker to her that they all used to be friends with. She'd told me about the guy before, and a bunch of strange shit he'd done surrounding her and how he'd pester her, but this time she told me that the guy actually raped her at a house party a long time ago, and that having to still deal with his weird obsession to this day scares the shit out of her. I felt awful for her. The hesitant way she kind of went through it all made it obvious that reliving all this was really hard for her. But the thing I've noticed is that every girl who I'm close enough with for them to trust me with a story like this, will have a story like this. Literally every girl who I'd consider a close friend has told me a similar story. My closest friend was spiked after meeting up with a guy she considers a friend, and he kept trying to make a move on her. He'd never tried this before and knew she was dating her ex at the time, and she highly suspects it was him who spiked her, even though she has no proof. Luckily one of her friends was there to get her home safe and get her away from him. The one that stuck with me most came from a girl I got really close with last year. She always seemed kind of intimidating and unapproachable. She's really one of the kindest and funniest people I've met deep down though, but she told me she kind of puts on a tough act to keep people at arm's length cause she was raped when she was 14. That it sent her spiraling into waves of depression and anxiety because the dude involved told everyone at school that she fucked him and 3 other guys at the same time to ruin her reputation out of spite, that she had to get psychiatric help cause she was self-harming, that she struggles to open up to anyone, and only in the last couple of years has she managed to work through it really. She told me all this with a nonchalant smile on her face, as if it was nothing to her, even though from her voice breaking up I could tell how much it still upset her, and that was sad as fuck to me. In fact, every girl who's told me a similar story has had that same look, trying to act like it's no big deal, saying there's no need to apologize to them cause it's in the past now, that they're sorry for bringing it up cause there's no use talking about it, etc. And it's all just horrifically sad to me, that every girl seems to have some kind of story like this. They all seem broken over it even though they're braving it out, they all seem resigned to the fact nothing will ever get done about what happened to them, and they all feel like a burden for even mentioning it, and it fucking sucks. I don't even know what the point of this post is beyond acknowledging how widespread a problem this is. Part of me always knew it logically. But as a guy I have that level of privilege where for a long time I was ignorant to the depths of the issue to a level where I could be detached from it emotionally, because it simply wasn't an issue I had to worry about growing up. I feel stupidly blind that for the longest time I didn't know quite how many people around me had been directly affected. The more I grow older and the more I encounter these stories firsthand, it really breaks me up inside. But what I have come away with from each of these encounters is a deep sense of utter respect and awe for each of these women, for how strong and brave they've had to be, and how much they deal with on their own. I will probably never really understand how it must feel to have to go through that, but I don't need to understand it to be amazed by every woman who's dealt with this shit. Even when they probably feel their weakest and most vulnerable in opening up about it, all I've been able to think about each time is how strong they are. Edit. I just want to say thank you to everyone who's been brave enough to share their own experiences. I didn't expect me just sharing my thoughts could promote such an open, supportive discussion between people who have actually experienced this. It's really touching to see. My inbox is pretty packed right now, and I need to get some sleep, but I plan on looking through all the replies to this over the next few days when I get the time and replying where I can. I feel like everyone that took the time and courage to share their stories in here deserves to have their voice heard and their experience listened to. Again, thank you for sharing. It's been massively eye-opening reading these. Comments. When I confronted my abuser who was a friend and in my main circle of friends, I got lucky enough that I got to keep the friends and he basically faded out, but in the first year or so, my friends would still try to bring him to bars and stuff. Once, my friends went out to a pub without me but with him and he had invited everyone back to his place to chill. I remember being so hurt that my BF wanted to go and that he didn't understand why I was upset. I was still making excuses and letting people step over me, so I remember saying I can accept the two of them going out with the gang, but I definitely was not okay with my BF going at the guy's place. In the end, they never even made it to the guy's place, but I am glad this whole thing happened. It's one of the first times I chose me over someone else, and my BF ended up hearing that I needed him on my side against the guy, and it felt good.